To really level up your programming skills, you want to learn more than just one language. Even if you only use one language professionally, you'll still benefit. But why is it worth your time? In this video, I'll be sharing some of the concepts and paradigms that'll make you grow from knowledge to wisdom. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the why first. If you've been programming for a while, especially if you've been programming professionally for over a year, and you know only one programming language, I highly recommend you learn a second one. One of the first things it will help you learn is new concepts, especially if you learn a language where that concept is a first-class citizen, so to say. Take functional programming. If you know Python or JavaScript and you've been playing around with some frameworks to learn some functional programming, that is different from actually learning a pure new functional language that has purity baked into the core. New concepts are a lot easier to learn in a language where they're first class. Say right now you're working in C and it doesn't support polymorphism. Learning a language that does will also make you a better C programmer, because you're suddenly able to see the concepts and the patterns, which is on a higher level than just what language features you have available. You can still apply those patterns. You can still apply this more generic thinking and the broader view you have attained. Or if you've only worked in React as a front-end developer, learning Java, modern Java that is, to learn server concepts can be very beneficial. Even if in the future you end up writing your first production server-side app in JavaScript anyway, with something like Nest.js, you'll see that those Java skills that you learned actually transfer really well to something like Nest.js and to server-side Node.js, because those same patterns apply, the same kind of thinking, the same directory structures and ways of working are transferable completely. Or use it to learn about static typing. If right now you only know a language like PHP or JavaScript or Python, dynamic languages, then learning about a static type language can change your thinking a bit. Static typing isn't the holy grail, but it has some advantages. The same is true for a new paradigm. It's a lot easier to learn with the right language. Say right now you've got a background in PHP or in JavaScript and you've done mostly object-oriented programming. Learning a language like OCaml or Racket or Haskell can be very beneficial. It's a lot harder to learn functional programming without being in a pure functional programming language. And when you've done some Haskell and you move back to JavaScript because that's what you do professionally, suddenly you'll notice using a framework like Ramda comes very natural to you. Those concepts transfer. I'm not sure if AI or machine learning can be considered its own paradigm, but if you want to learn about machine learning and maybe language models, you basically have to learn Python. And that's because the tools in Python for machine learning are best in class. Yes, there's other stuff for other languages available as well, but it's often a lot less, they're of lower quality, and they're definitely of lower performance. Basically, learning a new language removes your tunnel vision. It widens your field of view. It makes you a better programmer in general, because suddenly you're not thinking in language features and syntax, you're thinking in concepts and possibilities. And this is true even if you're still mostly writing code in your first language, because you can apply that knowledge there as well. Let's talk about the how next. Depending on what language you picked, how much time you invest and how quick you are, the syntax of a new language can often be learned in just a few days or maybe a week. When you're learning the syntax of a new language, I recommend you search for X for Y developers, so Haskell for C++ developers, for example. There's really great articles out there. There's even a book like Go for JavaScript developers. There's resources out there that help you when you're coming from this background. The easiest way to learn this language is this and this way. Haskell is very different from something like C++ or C, and there's many ways of approaching learning it, but I recommend finding an article that tells you this is how the C++ way of doing it, this is how you're thinking about it, this is what the Haskell equivalent looks like. And if you compare these things in a from-to kind of situation, it's very easy to make that translation. Next, I recommend doing some katas. Once you've got the fundamentals of the syntax ready, it's a good idea to immediately start coding and putting it into practice. But it's a bad idea to start installing your local development environment and figuring out how your IDE is configured for this new language and spending a lot of time on that. That will take the fun and the energy out of learning a new language. So I recommend a system like CodeWars, an online IDE to train yourself on. So it's literally katas. You can pick any language and it'll start suggesting katas for your level. It has the solution that you can type in this editor, and it has some sample tests, so you know whether you're going in the right direction. You immediately do this in a TDD way, which is also a great thing to learn while doing katas. Of course, having your local development environment set up with your IDE and your terminal and whatnot is crucial to success on the long term with the language. I would avoid it for a few days. Next, I recommend you focus on the algorithms and the concepts that are really new to you, things that are really different from your current way of working. Exposing yourself to this other world will definitely open your mind. When I was learning about algorithms in the past, I started to look at Haskell because it has a very math-like representation in the syntax, and I came across pattern matching, which is something that is not available in JavaScript, which is what my main language was back then, and it really changed my thinking. Yes, there's some limited destructuring in JavaScript that we call pattern matching sometimes, but it's totally on a different level. My next recommendation is to expose yourself to code written by experts in that language. Maybe there's a few large open source projects in that language that you can look up and you can start reading the code. It's important to start learning what idiomatic code in that language looks like. Code is idiomatic if it's the most natural way to solve a problem in that language. It's important to learn what idiomatic code in a language looks like, because otherwise you'll be solving problems in a way that's not natural, maybe more difficult in that language. Every language has its own way to solve certain problems, and learning those is important. Otherwise you'll be going a different route and you'll miss out on learning opportunities. And my last tip is to come up with a pet project. Something new can be a lot of fun if you can get yourself wired up about it. But even rewriting a pet project you've done in the past with another language, just rewriting it in this new language can be a learning opportunity as well. You'll end up with two competing implementations of completely different syntax and strengths and weaknesses and different styles that you can learn a lot from. To summarize, if you only know one language, learn another one. Make sure it's a really different one. Moving from JavaScript to TypeScript is not different enough. You've hit the sweet spot if learning that language is a bit mind-bending for you. If you're looking for a few language recommendations, I can give you a few recommendations, but please feel free to ignore them because your background is different than mine. I think everybody needs some JavaScript if you don't know it yet, because it's the lingua franca for the web. JavaScript also has become a compile target for many other languages, so it's a good idea to learn some. I think everybody needs some Python because there's a lot of machine learning and language models that are happening right now that it's good to have some knowledge about that. And I think everybody would benefit from learning Racket if you don't know a Lisp or Scheme yet. It will teach you concepts like recursion, functional programming in general, and it even has the capability to develop domain-specific languages, DSLs, in a really easy and neat way. Scheme is the teaching language for a reason. It is the language where a lot of innovation happens, innovation that a year later ends up in the language you're currently using. And now I'd like to hear from you in the comments. What second language will you learn? I hope this was helpful. I hope you liked it. If you have any thoughts, please leave a comment and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.